The thing is that the Kick study, they said, well, they repeated the same things, the same mantra that has happened many, many times. They said the radiation doses are too small. So I went away and tried to figure out what these doses were. Where did they come from? How do you get these doses? And indeed, this matter was studied by CERRIE, C-E-R-R-I-E, Committee Examining the Radiation Risks of Internal Emitters. If you type in CERRIE into Google, it'll come up, okay? The report's still there. This is a government committee report with pro-nukers and anti-nukers on the committee, which looked at it, and I was secretary to that committee. And there was a bloodbath, I'll tell you. I mean, the fights that went on inside that committee. 5 years it lasted, and wow, I managed to survive to the end. And the main conclusion of this committee was that, okay, we've got a good handle on external radiation risks, but not a good handle on internal radiation risks, okay? And the main reason why is because of this. This is a rather busy slide, I better sort of unpack it for you. So, not many people know how you get, how you figure out what the doses are to people living who are exposed to radiation risks near a nuclear power station. This is how you do it. And by the way, these doses are not measurements, like you walk up to somebody, what's the reading here? No, they don't do that. These are estimates, or even better, guesstimates. G-E-U-E-S-S, guesstimates. And how do you get them? Well, for a start, you have to use 3 computer models. Actually, there's 4. I'm leaving one out, isn't it? The first one is an environmental model, where you take the radionuclides that come out of a reactor and you model its movements across time and space. In other words, the wind patterns, weather patterns. It's like what's happening right now in Japan. The behavior of radionuclides in the environment. And then after you get a result from that, you plug it into the second model, which are biokinetic models. In other words, how much is actually taken up by a human being? By breathing in this stuff, by drinking contaminated water, eating contaminated food, or skin absorption. Those are the main methods. There's also one or two other ways as well. And then once you've got becquerels inside you, you've got to figure out what the dose is inside you. And that is the greatest con of all. You have to use dosimetric models, converting becquerels to milligray or millisieverts.
Milligrams.
Or in the United States, they still adhere to medieval milligrams. And then after you've got a dose, you've got to apply fudge factors, weighting factors, tissue weighting factors, and radiation weighting. These are sort of basically fudge factors that just dream them up fairly arbitrarily. And then you apply a risk model, figuring out, well, once you've got the dose, how many people are going to die, but these risk models are not very good for risks in infants, and they're even worse for risks in utero exposures. Now, just take one thing away from this rather busy slide, is that the estimates that people of doses to people living near nuclear power stations are crap.
Yeah.
Absolute crap. They don't mean anything. They will tell you on a stack of Bibles that so many microsieverts they get per year. Huh? That's like arguing how many angels dance in the top of a pin. I'm not kidding you, it really is. And it's only when you take it, deconstruct it, take it apart, you see that it's a load of crap. One of the reasons is you have to take the results from this model and put it into this model, and then get the result and put it into this model. And in fact, there's another one beforehand, didn't I? So there's 4 models, and so you have errors going from one to the other, to the other, to the other. And by the time you get to the end, wow, it's just fairy tales, basically. Next slide. The reason is that when you do a computer model, you don't get one figure. You get a probabilistic answer. Right? Usually in the shape of something like this. Very often they're croissant shapes, which is the tail down like this. But anyway, for the sake of simplicity, I've shown you this is these are the results. Now, What they hope the results will be like, what they hope, will be this dotted line here, where you've got a great deal of confidence that that central value there is the figure that you're going to use. And if in fact it's like that, I'd use it too. Fine. Good scientists do that. Because the uncertainty range between 95 and 5 is quite small. So you've got good handle on this, you've got good confidence that that's the final result. No, that's not like that. In reality, it's like this, the bottom. Very spread out. And that means that the result could really be anywhere from where it says 95 to 5 here. Anywhere. In other words, you don't know. A better way of putting it is that the estimates are unreliable. And that's the main thing that I've been saying is climate. Now this is an example from an official study. Do you remember I told you there was three models? There was environmental, biokinetic, and dosimetric models. Well, these are an example of the uncertainties in dosimetric models. You take cesium, and you use the ingestion rather than inhalation, and you get to figure out the dose to the organ here. And we're with a value of 4. You divide 95 percentile value by the 5th percentile value, and you get this figure 4. Do you understand? You take the 95 divided by the 5, and you get an expression of the uncertainty involved in a particular value. Basically, the bigger the number, the higher the uncertainty. Now, when you get to strontium-90 breathing it into lungs, the uncertainty value is 5,000, or plutonium, even worse, at the bone surface, 20,000. Now, this is not me making this up. This is a study by scientists who work for the US Nuclear Regulatory Commission and the Commission of European Communities back in 1998. This table comes from that. Right? Ladies and gentlemen, what this says is that the dose estimates are a pile of crap. That's what they say. Because if you've got a range, even with that, 240, it means huge variation, huge uncertainty. It could be any value. And so how can you say that the dose is so many microsieverts? So it's just nonsense, it really is. I must accuse a scientist of saying that. It's like radiation could be a cause. So when they say, no, it can't be a cause, I'm saying, yes, it could be a cause. Go on. So, we know that there are big increases in cancer near kiddies who live near power stations in Germany. What could it be? Could it be direct radiation from the reactors? Or electromagnetic radiation from the power lines? No, it's from the emissions and discharges. The difference between these two is that inside a nuclear reactor you've got fission going on, and you've got neutrons coming out, and gamma radiation. And they actually penetrate the reactor shell. And they actually give doses to workers, and also members of the public who have to live very nearby. And that's called reactor shine, because that's what's happening. The stuff comes out of the reactor. There's also sky shine, where it goes outside the reactor roof, bounces off nitrogen, oxygen, carbon atoms in the atmosphere, and comes back to the Earth again. It's called sky shine. And you can actually measure what the doses are, because it's external direct radiation. So you can switch on your Geiger counter, and you can click, 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 and you can actually read off what the dial says. You have a good handle on that. But when it comes to emissions and discharges, because it gets inside you, you breathe it in, you eat it, you drink it, it gets under your skin. And once it's inside you, it stays there. And we don't have very good handle, as I said, from what actually happens with reactor emissions and discharges. Next slide. Now, this is an important slide because it shows the first step of my hypothesis that Bill mentioned. I used to think that, that reactors gave out steady amounts of discharges throughout the year. About 80%, 85% of the discharges come out once a year. All the rest is filtered throughout the rest. here. And where does that happen? That happens when they open up the reactor for refueling. So some of the old fuel out and new fuel in. To do that, they have to depressurize. A lot of the radioactive, well, all of the radioactive gases come out over a period of 3 or 4 days. And this slide is the only slide that I've ever found which shows this, because they're very careful. They don't, none of the nuclear regulatory bodies show anything like that. But 1 year in, I've got the year, it was 2005 from memory. This is from Advertisement for Strahlenschutz, and it's carbon-14 concentrations, emissions, and the uplift and the emissions from this nuclear power station, Neckarwestheim. Now, these are quarterly, so it's 4 year, 4 year, 4 year. And if you look at it, you can see roughly 1 year, another 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 year. And those are where they open up the reactor. Now, this is important because that means that a big concentrations, a big spike comes out. And the people living nearby get it. And that spike is important because once it gets inside you, it gives you a dose at that concentration. That's important. Short-term discharges are far, far, far more toxic than long-term chronic ones. Next slide. So this is my hypothesis. There's episodic spikes. There's result in high concentrations in people nearby, particularly in pregnant women. Large doses to embryos, their embryos and fetuses. Resulting babies are born pre-leukemic, and after about a year, 2 years, they get full-blown leukemia. That's what I'm saying in short. Next slide. This is leukemogenesis in children after Professor Russi at Hamburg University. And this is her theory, not mine. But she explained what happens this is birth here, okay? This is before birth, this is after birth, okay? And as you know, you're all doctors, so you know that leukemia is a disease of the bone marrow, yeah? Of the stem cells in bone marrow, yeah? Lots of stem cells in bone marrow. So you get a bone marrow stem cell here, it gets blitzed by radiation from the inside of internal radiation. It results in a pre-leukemic clone here. And then the birth happens. There's a second hit, because it's still living in a radioactive environment, and that results in a leukemic cell. That's what she says. And most of my colleagues in Germany think that's what's happening. Next slide. I've already said that. And the main big pulses are, well, our friends, tritium, carbon-14, krypton-85. There's also a little bit of xenon and argon, but most of the xenon, what happens when they shut down the reactor, you wait for 3 or 4 days for the shot isotopes of xenon and other radioactive gases to die down. And sometimes they go half-lives, maybe a half an hour, 20 minutes or whatever, a couple of days at the very most. But hydrogen, carbon, and krypton have got long half-lives. 12.3, 5,740, and 10.7 years, respectively. Long half-lives. Go on.